beyond Aquinnah, beyond the land itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think that land is such an important part of it, and there's no way to escape that. And there's no way to say, like, well, if we lose the land, we'll be fine. But I also think that, yeah, we need to find other ways while we're also fighting to keep the land and get more of it back, to acknowledge the other ways that Wampanoag community can and I think must exist. And so for the example of my family, my brother and I both don't live on Martha's Vineyard. And my parents, they have one house on the island, and we're fortunate enough to own some land. And, my mother, as you said, has always had this dream of leaving each of us a home on the island. And, I feel extremely lucky and fortunate to be in that situation because so many people, especially in the tribe, just don't have that luxury. But even with what I consider a very uniquely fortunate land situation, I can see, just one generation in the future, if people decide to sell it, or there's a financial disaster, or something bad happens. There's so many things that can go wrong that even now, feeling like we're doing pretty well, we have this land, we have choices, how quickly that can unravel. So I think it's sort of two questions. One is thinking about what are the creative ways that we can think about using and keeping the land, but then also how can we build and strengthen our community to ensure that even as land potentially continues to get lost, we don't lose our community.
Right. There's also, medium home prices in Aquinnah are around $3.5 million. I think you wrote that some over $8 million. So even if you all decided to move back, then you'd also have to factor in things like property taxes.
Yeah, and this is a huge concern, which is why I think it's important to highlight that a lot of the land, and in my family in particular, is privately owned. So yeah, we're paying the regular property taxes in the town, and I think that's a stereotype about Native people, that we get all these free benefits, we don't pay taxes, we get free checks from the government, and that could not be further from the truth. And yeah, we're now paying these really, really high taxes on land that's been in the family and been in the community for generations and generations. And so it's not enough to just have the land. You need to also be making enough money in your life to be able to keep the land and pay property taxes. And so that's also something that I think a lot about. You can't just be passive with the land and like, well, we have it, this is great, and we're going to hold on to it forever. You really have to work to hold on to it.
Our guest today is writer Joseph Lee. We're talking about his new book, Nothing More of This Land, Community Power in the Search for Indigenous Identity. We'll be right back after a short break. I'm Tanya Mosley, and this is Fresh Air. The Neubauer Family Foundation supports WHYY's Fresh Air and its commitment to sharing ideas and encouraging meaningful conversation. Support for NPR comes from this station and from BritBox presenting Outrageous, a new BritBox original drama based on the scandalous true story of England's infamous Mitford sisters. Streaming this and more original series at BritBox.com. And from Eric and Wendy Schmidt, through the Schmidt Family Foundation, working toward a healthy, resilient, secure world for all. On the web at theschmidt.org.
You're listening to Michigan Public. I'm Kaylin Goss. Thanks for joining me. Michigan Public is licensed by the Federal Communications Commission to the Regents of the University of Michigan. Meetings of the Board of Regents of the University of Michigan are open to the public. More information is at michiganpublic.org. Click on Public Documents at the bottom of the page. In Michigan Public weather tonight, mostly clear skies with lows from the lower 50s to the upper 50s. Tomorrow, mostly sunny, and we'll see highs from the lower to mid 80s. It'll be hotter on Wednesday with mostly sunny skies across the region and highs near 90 degrees. You're listening to Michigan Public, 91.7 in Ann Arbor and Detroit, 91.1 in Flint, 91.3 in Port Huron, 89.7 in Lansing, and 104.1 in Grand Rapids. You can also always find us online at michiganpublic.org. It's 9:30. This is Fresh Air. I'm Tanya Mosley, and today I'm talking with writer Joseph Lee. He's a member of the Aquinnah Wampanoag tribe, and his latest book, Nothing More of This Land, is a blend of memoir, history, and investigative reporting. And in it, Lee traces his family's deep roots on Martha's Vineyard, the struggles and resilience of his tribe, and examines how Indigenous communities across the country grapple with questions of land, belonging, and sovereignty. Lee holds an MFA from Columbia University and teaches creative writing at Mercy University. His writing has appeared in The Guardian, BuzzFeed News, Vox, Electric Literature, and High Country News. Let's talk a little bit about sovereignty, because as I mentioned earlier, you write quite a bit about it. So Native American sovereignty refers to this inherent right of Indigenous tribes to govern themselves, to make their own laws, to manage their internal affairs, independent of the federal government. And you spend a good portion of this book exploring it, what it means for your tribe, what it means for other tribes throughout the nation and the world. What common threads surprised you?
I think one thing that surprised me is all of the different ways that people think about and use sovereignty. When I grew up in the tribe in the 90s, it was just a few years after my tribe, the Aquinnah Wampanoag, had received federal recognition, which in the U.S. is kind of like the U.S. recognizing your sovereignty as a sovereign nation. And so I grew up in this space where the tribe was really proud of this achievement and excited by it, and, you know, excited for all the opportunities and for what we could do with it. And also just, I think, happy that we were finally being acknowledged as a people, as a nation, which had been denied for so long. And I think because of that, I felt like maybe the work was done. You know, I knew that my parents and my grandparents' generation had achieved federal recognition, and it felt in some ways like that was the finish line, like we did it and now we have it. But what surprised me and what I've learned is that, you know, it's not something you can just sit on, we achieved it, especially when we're talking about just the sort of U.S. federal government version of it. There are all these other ways that you need to practice it and employ it and defend it and build it. And that was one of the really exciting things for me in the reporting I did, is traveling around the country and seeing tribes really using and flexing their sovereignty and using it to push back against some of these U.S. structures. And then along with that too, I think I also heard people talking about sovereignty as something that could exist outside of that U.S. federal recognition structure entirely. And to me, that was really interesting and exciting, because I always thought of sovereignty as like just that, basically sovereignty equals federal recognition, but I came to learn it's a lot more complicated.
Give us an example of being outside of that structure of federal recognition that you learned.
Yeah, I mean, there are tribes, for example, that are not federally recognized at all, and one of the tribes that I met on a reporting trip was the Shasta Indian Nation in Northern California. They're not federally recognized, and we were talking to them in the Klamath River Basin as the Klamath River dams, 4 of them, which have now come down, but I was there right before they came down, and they were there trying to get their land back. So when the dam would be removed, the reservoir that the dam had formed would drain away, and that was the land they were trying to reclaim. And I was asking them, you know, you guys aren't federally recognized. Is that something you're trying to get? And what they told me was, well, of course it is. You know, we deserve that recognition. We feel we deserve that recognition, and we want it, and we'll try to get it. But right now our priority is getting the land back. And that was really interesting to me, because I think growing up, I always saw achieving federal recognition is like, that's the thing you should try to do.
Paramount, yeah.
Yeah, like you do that, and then maybe you see what else you can do.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the
qualifications of being federally recognized? Because your tribe actually gained sovereignty, if I'm reading this correctly, kind of by the skin of its teeth.
Yeah, the federal government has basically a list. I believe it's 7 criteria that you have to apply for and meet. And there's an Office of Federal Acknowledgement in the Department of Interior that makes these determinations. And my tribe applied and then were denied. And then we had an opportunity to resubmit some documents, some additional information, and eventually we were accepted. But I read back through those documents, and it's kind of strange. In the initial rejection,